Hello and welcome to the Neurodivergent Social Work Voices campaign. I am Florence Smith, the neurodivergent social worker and your host. If you've stopped in to listen, there must be a reason why. Maybe it's to listen to and learn from the first-hand experiences of neurodivergent, or as I like to call us, neurosparkly social workers, on how you can create a neuro-inclusive workplace. Or maybe you're seeking advice from other neurodivergent social workers about what works for them. Whatever your reason, it's nice to have you here, because for 1 month we will hear from 19 neurosparkly social workers. The conversations will explore 19 journeys, 19 unique neurological profiles, and 19 tips for other neurosparkly social workers. So, why has this campaign been launched? Well, it's been done with the vision to raise awareness, share knowledge, celebrate neurodivergence, as well as increase representation of neurosparkly social workers across the profession. You can find us everywhere from students, social work assistants, frontline professionals, educators, and managers. So today I am talking with Carolyn, a social worker with Dyslexia, Dyscalculia and Dyspraxia. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello, Florence.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I was wondering if you could tell me and the listeners a little bit about your current role in social work.
Okay, well, I just serve as social worker, so I'm based in East Lothian in Scotland, and I've been doing my job for 7 years, and I have dyslexia, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia, and I also have to say I absolutely love my job so much. So I'm working full time, and I work with offenders, and I obviously supervise them in the community, trying to help offenders find better ways of managing their life and trying to get out of the justice service system, so avoid offending in the future. So I love my passion. Obviously, I think is good because I love my job so much.
And I can hear the passion in your voice as you talk as well. I mean, what drew you to working in that sector?
Well, for myself, I'm an ex-police officer, so I was retired on ill health from the police service in 2010. And then it was that kind of connection of what is it I want to do with my life. And obviously, since I was retired from the police, because I've got bad knees, that's why I was retired from the police. I then went from police to then think about, okay, social work, because I'd always wanted to be a social worker as well. Went from social work to then justice, because to me, justice is that's what I really, really wanted to do. Obviously in the police, I was locking people up, whereas now I'm trying to help people.
That sounds almost like you've gone full circle as well. And
Yeah,
even with the
yeah.
retirement of the police force, kind of found your way to stay with your passion.
Exactly. To actually keep it on track, but actually to be able to work with people in a way that I'm actually helping them. So
Yeah.
rather than if they maybe get lifted by the police, then my job is then to help them find different ways to not get lifted again, and to maybe manage their frustrations or their anger in ways that doesn't get them lifted again by the police.
That sounds like a really, really interesting kind of social work role. Thank you for sharing.
It is,
Caroline.
yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what your neurodivergence is or how your brain sparkles.
Okay. Well, again, for myself, my dyslexia was only identified when I was at university in 2012. Prior, so I was, oh goodness knows how old I was at that point. I was 38 years old when I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And before then, it was just my brain. I just worked in a way, and things worked out, but things always had difficulties, but I didn't understand why. Then I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and then when I was at university, I managed to get help and support to help me proofread reports, because spelling grammar is my major difficulty. Again, things like directions left and right. I haven't had to understand left and right. I'll lose my car in a car park very easily if I'm not parked in the same line in the car park. I can't find my car. I can't tie up shoelaces. I can't do zips. I struggle to put lids on bottle tops and things like that. But it was in 2020 when it was February 2020 when my managers were thinking they wanted to get more support for me in terms of dyslexia.
Yeah.
So it was the start of March 2020. I had an assessment with another educational psychologist who then identified the dyspraxia and the dyscalculia for myself. So I got my report on the 23rd of September 2020, which, and obviously lockdown started the 24th of March 2020. But when I learned about the dyspraxia, then it took me a little bit of time to try and work that one out, exactly what that meant for me. But it made more sense because then I was like, well, that's why I can't. Yeah. That's why I have no I don't understand directions. That's why I'm not very good at zipping up and why I can't do buttons. And, I'm 44 years old and I can't do buttons up. I now understand why. The fact I can trip up in my conversations. This isn't planned conversations. I'm just I'm talking, but sometimes I make a mess of conversations. Sometimes they say things a bit wrong, or I stutter. Again, that's the dyspraxia. So understanding all of that has then helped. Giving it a name helps me then understand it, so I can then say to colleagues, friends, family that it's like, okay, I'm not meaning to be, maybe not meaning to say something bad. It's just my dyspraxic brain that may mean I say something bad or something wrong.
Mm-hmm. I'm frantically nodding away as you talk as a fellow dyspraxic. Find I trip over my tongue or can't quite get my thoughts out my mouth the way I want. I mean, that is a perfect good example just there.
Mm-hmm. The way that I see it, and the way that I've got a picture actually on my wall, I'm pretty sure it's from I think the Dyslexic, one of the Facebook pages that's or Facebook groups, and it's like how my brain works, which is looks like the spaghetti junction of the Birmingham motorways, whereas most other brains are just work, but like it's just a straight M8 from Edinburgh to Glasgow, pretty straight road. Mine is just so many junctions, and I will always go off to one part of the road and then have to turn about and then get lost because I can't work out the left and right from the junction. So that's how my brain, it takes me longer to actually get to where I want to go. Even though, again, is when I was talking to my manager about it, trying to describe, we had an issue in 2020 where my manager wasn't sure if I was actually fit to do the job that I was doing because I wasn't able to think the way that she wanted me to think. But it's because I think in different ways.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, how has it been getting the assessment through your employer and then getting that diagnosis kind of as an adult?
I think it was hard. I think more so because, when I found out about this, and actually it was end of March 2020 when life was actually kind of a bit imploding for us all. It was really, really, really difficult to actually manage it and to cope with it, put it into words and understand what it was. And then because also I was away from my colleagues and away from, not having that kind of contact with my colleagues and managers, I think it was a bit harder to try and take on board. But then also what work did as well, which wasn't ideal, but it did actually help me. I was put on an improvement plan for work because they were trying to help me become better. There was a lack of them trying to do something to help me. It was more I had to do things for them.
Yeah.
Which wasn't ideal. But then it's also like, okay, you're giving me an opportunity to help to learn and to work out what I need. So I could then say things like, I know what I need a mind map. And this is what I need you to do for me, is to give me the mind mapping software to help me do my mind mapping, because that helps me then grab all the stuff that I need to hold on to it. So then I can also show my manager that even though I maybe don't see what she needs me to see as the first identified risk in something, at least I can show that I've still got it. So the impact for me was it helped me become a better social worker. It helped me own my diagnoses. It helped me learn what I needed. It helped me be able to ask more and say more, and it helped me give me the confidence to come forward to my managers and say, can you help me with this? I don't understand this. Whereas before, I think I didn't do that because I thought I should know this. I've been a qualified social worker for long enough now. I should know this answer. Whereas now I was more able to actually go to them and say, I don't understand what you've just said, or I don't understand what I'm supposed to do, or can you help me with this? It also gave me the confidence to then go, okay, I can't work out my diary right now. I've got too many conflicting issues. Can you help me work out my diary?
Yeah. Yeah. And did it give them an opportunity, or kind of not giving them an opportunity, but for them to take responsibility of learning how like your brain works and how they need to adapt for you?
It gave them in some ways, it gave me an opportunity to say to them, this is how my brain works.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave them a lot of kind of stuff again I picked up from the Dyslexic Facebook group, various pictures of the skull.
Thank you. I was just about to say, and having pictures from the likes of Facebook group could be a good way to kind of show employers that actually this is what it is, without having to use words which we can sometimes fall over.
That's it. Is I think the pictures really helped my manager, and then I could highlight the ones that I struggle with, and maybe add in something that maybe wasn't in the actual mind map itself, but it's like, this is me, this is who I am. So my manager could see it exactly, and that helped her become a better manager to me as well.
And Carolyn, I know we're talking a little bit about your experiences of practice now, but I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your experience of social work more generally as a neurodivergent practitioner, either kind of any good practice or bad practice that you've seen.
Yeah, I think that's maybe hard. And previously, I think my manager expected too much of me. And even, there was something that was mentioned in the report that was done, and my manager expected me to answer a question straight away. And it says in my report that I can't. Whereas it says in my report that I need time. I need to go away and say, actually, I'll just have a couple of minutes to work that answer out or work it out for myself. And that I was always a bit too much like, you need to give me the answer straight away. And actually, after that report came through, and then my manager asked me again why I wanted to be a social worker, because again, I think she was thinking I wasn't good enough to be a social worker at that point. And I answered straight away, which is my habit to do so. And then she's like, oh, so I think from the bad practice, I've probably had that kind of experience of give us an answer straight away.
Yeah. And it's not giving your brain time to process, is it? Because I know as a dyslexic person, I need time to go away from the kind of context, think about the situation or the question, draw upon any kind of relevant experience, but also knowledge to inform that. And I often freeze. I get in freeze mode if I'm expected to give an answer straight away. So thank you for sharing that, because I know, having heard your experience, it feels quite nice to know that we're not alone.
The good experiences, I think now, again, my managers are playing to my strengths. So this is obviously after the diagnosis, and obviously, I guess now we're in a different world from post-COVID, but playing to what works for me, what makes me good at my job is like things like I do. I'm very good at a particular program, which is a Caledonian program. It's domestic abuse. So I'm very, very good at the kind of the focused work with clients. I'm very good at I've had group work training. So again, my group work is really, really good. My group work skills are really good. I have the people in my group seem to really gel to me.
Yeah.
And that is playing to my strengths, playing to who I am as a person and my ability to be a good practitioner.
Definitely. And it's a key social work skill, isn't it? Kind of building and maintaining relationships. And it can be challenging in a group setting. So to hear that you're kind of excelling in that, it is a common neurosparkly skill, is relationship building.
Again, studies, because again, studies, I think prior to the diagnosis, this was in my master's degree. To me, it was always like, I'm not very good at this reading. I don't remember. I don't remember the bits and pieces that I've read. And that was who I was. I just didn't realise that others are better at reading things and they can remember the quotes and they can, their writing is better. Once I learned about my diagnosis, then again, I think the help and support, and now obviously especially now, I think in the job that I'm doing, and I'm interviewing people who maybe have been at school and with dyslexia or dyspraxia, and then I'll share that with them during an interview with these service users, clients. I'll say to them, yeah, I have the same. And I'm like, it's not a barrier anymore. It was a barrier, perhaps, like when I was in education and kind of the late 90s, 2000s, it was a barrier. Whereas now, when I went back to university in 2011, it's not a barrier anymore. And you can see it. And I can say that to colleagues. I can say that to people, on any training course I'm on. I can say, can I have the notes, for example, or I've got, because I have visual issues, I'm not very good at reading black text on white, causes me issues sometimes. So again, I'll say, oh yeah, I've got glasses, it's like, can I change this, or can you give me some time? So because I've got these words, I'm more able, and more people are now able to understand.
And sometimes having the diagnosis in line with them, because I know in England you can get the disabled students allowance, which gives you kind of access to one-to-one support, but also means that when you email your tutor needing the slideshow in advance, they have to give it to you.
Yes, and it was amazing actually. Like it was in my second year when I actually had the diagnosis, and then it was amazing. This world opened up, and previously when I did my undergrad, and that was 96 to 2000, I didn't know. I had no inkling whatsoever. And I just struggled, but I didn't know I was struggling. It was just life. That's what I did.
Yeah.
It took me longer. And again, the fact it takes me a lot longer to write something than anyone else, it was like, that's just it. I just accepted it for what it is. Whereas afterwards, after I was aware of it, and after, using the dyslexic student fund, or sorry, the disabled student funds, I had so much more support around me, and I felt supported as a student.
It does make a massive difference, and to be able to have your undergraduate experience to compare against your postgraduate as well, really does show the difference between the two, and maybe the changes since your undergraduate that's come today. And I think that's that's how maybe when we see our society, how it's changed, and the understanding of dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. It's like these are. A lot of people do have them. Again, I think you have to, if you're a neurodivergent person, I think you have to up and say, otherwise people just expect, I think you're just a neurotypical. So I think that's where the benefit of, like for myself, I was more able to just stand up and say, I need this, because I'm not neurotypical. Definitely, there is that assumption that we all think the same. And it's having to disrupt that by saying, oh, don't make that assumption. I think some of us are neurosparkly and neurodivergent. Yes,
and it's like, don't make the assumption, this is what I need. And I'm maybe unlike any other student because this is my needs. And I think that's where we as people who are neurodivergent, social workers, neurodivergent, anybody, we have to then be able to feel confident enough to ask.
Definitely. And even in the assumption that we're neurotypical, neurodiversity, even in kind of neurotypical profiles, their brains also differ as well. Their processings will differ. So it's kind of that kind of blanket assumption that we're all the same that needs to be challenged.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, and what advice would you give to other neurosparkly social workers?
Again, I would say do not hesitate to ask, and actually ask. The more times that you ask, the more times that you say it to everybody you have, is something you can't sit back and let someone else either just assume, because again, if the assumption is made, then they might just think you're like everyone else and you are unique. And again, when I actually wrote a piece in the Dyslexic magazine. So there's a Dyslexic magazine in Scotland, and I wrote my piece, and I'm happy to share it with you when I get back.
Please.
It was in December 2020, I think I shared it. And it was basically like me saying, I am unique, and I've done all this stuff. I was undiagnosed dyslexic, and I still achieved everything. And, I've not let anything, obviously it's been harder. I've tried much harder than anybody else, but I've achieved so much, and I'm proud of what I've achieved. So again, I think when I graduated from undergrad, I had a 2-2, and I was a bit like, oh my goodness, I've got a 2-2. But actually, now that I'm aware of it, I'm like, I got 2-2, and I had other stuff that was going on in my life at that particular point, and I still managed to achieve a 2-2 with dyslexia, and I was undiagnosed. How amazing am I?
Looking at your past with a new lens as well, isn't it?
Yeah. We all need to do
Mm.
is that each person who's dyslexic has to speak out and say, this is who I am. I am a unique individual, and I'm not neurotypical. I'm a unique individual, and this is my needs. So no, I think it's important for everybody to do that, because it obviously takes confidence within yourself, but we can only get the help and support to make us better practitioners by speaking out. Otherwise, I think if you're struggling in the corner and no one knows, then because people just assume you're the same as everyone else, you're not going to get the help and support you need.
No, that's it. And it kind of enables a different view on the struggles as well, of this isn't someone who isn't kind of managing with a neurotypical brain. This is someone who is neurosparkly, being overwhelmed and stressed out by a neurotypical system and structure. So what can we do for them, as opposed to it kind of all falling on the individual shoulders?
Yeah, exactly.
Carolyn, thank you for giving your time to celebrate neurodivergence in social work and for sharing your lived experiences. And thank you to everyone who has listened. If you're interested in learning more about neurodivergent social workers and neuroinclusion, please check out the Neurodivergent Social Worker website and the British Association of Social Workers Special Interest Group. The link to both the website and the Special Interest Group will be in the description below. Thank you.